Revenge films.
My name is Rachel. I live with my husband, Thomas, and our daughter, Kelly, who is in preschool, as well as Thomas's parents as a household of 5. About a year ago, it was discovered that my father-in-law was ill, and ever since then, he's been battling this disease in the hospital. For the treatment of his difficult disease, my father-in-law has been in and out of the hospital, but unfortunately, the disease only continued to spread. 1 year after his illness was discovered, his health severely declined, and we were told that he was in critical condition. At the time, my mother-in-law helped each other, and we were going back and forth between home and the hospital. Between raising my daughter and taking care of the household chores, every single day was extremely busy and stressful. However, I wanted to be able to support my mother-in-law physically and emotionally. So I didn't have time to be crying, and I did my best to stay positive every day and support her the best I could. On the complete opposite side of that, as for my husband, Thomas, the moment my father-in-law was hospitalized, Thomas stopped coming home after work at night. It was typical for him to go out for drinks after work, and he often came home late at night, but recently, he would leave the house in the middle of the night or stay overnight and come back in the morning. So I thought it was strange. However, because I was taking care of my father-in-law and my daughter, I didn't have the bandwidth to pay much attention of that. My husband was very clearly acting suspiciously, but all I could do was let him be while I did all that needed to be done. My husband took complete advantage of the fact that his mother and I were very busy and wouldn't even contact me some days, when he wasn't going to come back for the night. I was starting to distrust him more and more, when one day he came home in the morning and he suddenly said the most unbelievable thing to me.
Hey Rachel, did you see my dad's will? It said on the will that all of his inheritance would be split evenly between his wife and his sons, didn't it? That means that between my mom, me, and my little brother, we're going to each get $2 million! So I'll pay you the child support fees at once in cash. So let's get a divorce. I'm actually going to live in a $1 million mansion with the person that I truly love. So I'm not going to come back here anymore. And I'll let you have this old house anyway.
The will? Divorce? Wait, what's gonna happen? What do you mean?
Anyway, that's that. It's all settled. Well then, I'm gonna go!
What do you mean you're gonna go? Where? You need to explain everything to me. I was completely flustered, but my husband ignored me and he walked straight out of the house. After that, he did not come back home after. At first, I was at a loss and devastated, but that feeling quickly turned into anger. And then I went straight to my mother-in-law and I told her everything that my husband had said to me. My mother-in-law was furious, and then she discovered a certain little truth to me. It was something that my husband didn't even know about himself, but the truth was that Thomas and his father were not biologically related. Thomas was actually the son of his mother's former husband and the former husband's mistress. However, ex-husband and the mistress unfortunately passed away in an accident, and because the child did nothing wrong to deserve that, my mother-in-law felt sorry for him, and she ended up taking him in. However, my father-in-law had actually refused to legally adopt Thomas, so the two of them did not have any legal standing in family. That meant that the only person considered a son to my father-in-law was Thomas's younger brother, John. Because of that, if things go exactly according to the will, it would mean that Thomas would not be getting a single penny of the inheritance. I was so shocked by this sudden revelation, and I was at a loss for words. But at the same time, I couldn't forgive Thomas for trying to throw his family away and only having eyes on his father's inheritance, while his father was keeping hope alive and desperately fighting the disease. That's why I decided to stay silent about what my mother-in-law told me. A few days later, without knowing anything about it, I received an envelope with the divorce papers in the mail from Thomas. I know Thomas was about to be in debt over $1 million, so I thought I should divorce him as soon as possible, so I immediately filed it in and turned in the forms into a city office. Soon after, my father-in-law was in critical condition. Even though I called Thomas, who was still my husband, and informed him of this, he never showed up to the hospital, and then without Thomas saying farewell, his father took his last breath. Thomas never ended up returning any of my calls, and in the end, he didn't even show his face at the funeral. I stayed around at the hospital, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law, and all 3 of us were able to manage the funeral ourselves. And around that time, my mother-in-law and I were about to reach our limit with anger with Thomas. However, we both knew what was about to happen. The funeral service was over, and right around that time, we were about to return to our normal lives. All of the paperwork for the inheritance was also settled. And just as stated in my father-in-law's will, the inheritance was split evenly between my mother-in-law and Thomas's younger brother. Until the very last moment, Thomas hadn't returned a single phone call or message. But right about that time, I received a call from him. Yeah, hello?
Hello? So what happened to the inheritance? When is it going to be deposited into my account?
So what are you talking about? There's no inheritance that's going anywhere near you.
Huh? Did you not read the will yourself? You saw it written in there, didn't you?
Thomas was speaking arrogantly as if he laughed at me, and I had enough. That was when I decided to expose the full truth to him and tell him everything that his mother told me. So that's that. Now do you understand?
You're joking, right? There's no way! Are you telling me that I'm not actually related to anybody in my family? Well then, who the hell was I born from? Come on! You're definitely just making this up, aren't you? Are you trying to trick me?
Whether you want to believe it or not is entirely up to you. But there's a mistake about the fact that you're not going to receive any of the inheritance.
No way! But I already built a $1 million mansion to live in, right? I'm going to marry my girlfriend, and we're planning on living there. And I literally just got back from meeting her parents and telling them about the house that we're going to live in together!
Even though Thomas and I had just gotten a divorce a couple of days ago, he was already thinking about getting remarried to his mistress. But I could only imagine that his mistress was only after Thomas for his money. So I was pretty happy that the marriage was not going to happen anyway. Thomas was in shock that he was in panic, throwing a tantrum that I couldn't handle anymore. So I simply hung up the phone. But then apparently, this time he tried to call his mother, and she only confirmed everything that I had told him, which was in fact the truth, and explained it to him once again. She then lectured, saying that she'll never forgive him for disrespecting her husband who raised him all these years. She said that Thomas didn't say a word after that, and he hung up. For a while after, I didn't hear a peep from my ex-husband, and then my mother-in-law came with a certain suggestion.
Rachel, I truly am sorry about my son and what he did to you.
Please, ma'am, there's nothing for you to apologize for.
I have a little suggestion, but this house is already old and I'm thinking of putting it up for sale. And I don't really want to be living in this big house by myself. And then I was thinking that you have been wonderful to me and my family for all these years, that I would like to give this house of my husband's inheritance.
Gift me a house? From my mother-in-law's insistence, it was decided that she was going to build a house for me and my daughter to live in together. So I moved from my ex-husband's family's home. And then, so my mother-in-law could see her grandchild Kelly whenever she wanted, she ended up signing the contract for an apartment building nearby the house. Even after Thomas and I got a divorce, it looked like things were going to be able to maintain a wonderful relationship with her, and I was relieved, especially because Kelly loved her grandma. Since she was going to be putting up the house for sale, until our new house was being built, my daughter and I moved back in with my parents at the family home. A few days after I moved back in with my parents, I received a phone call from an unknown number. When I answered, to my shock, the person that was my ex-husband's mistress. Hello, this is Rachel.
You're Thomas's wife, aren't you? You lied, and you stole the inheritance from him, didn't you? You better give that back right now.
Out of nowhere, his mistress suddenly started raising her voice at me. I was so over it. I didn't know how to respond. And then without thinking, she started saying all of these kinds of things that exposed her identity to me.
I'm 22 years old and I was supposed to have gotten the cream of the crop. And life was supposed to be easy for me after this. But it's all a disaster because of you. I thought he was a pretty useless guy at the company. But he told me he was going to be getting a huge inheritance from his father. That's why I started dating him.
So Thomas was having an affair with a 22-year-old junior colleague from his office. Then the mistress continued yelling all kinds of illogical things at me, and perhaps she was satisfied after that, because she eventually hung up. But unfortunately, now that I knew that Thomas was having an extramarital affair with a junior colleague from this company, the next thing I did was pick up the phone to call his company. And then, after I exposed the affair to the company, I looked into where the mistress was and decided to collect a settlement fee from her as well. Not knowing that I had already hired a lawyer for this case, I suddenly got a phone call from Thomas this time. Hello, what do you need from me?
When she found out that I wasn't going to get any of the inheritance, my mistress ran away from me.
Thomas seemed really depressed, and he continued to reluctantly speak about what happened.
I'm about to go home over there.
Where is over there?
Well, that's obvious, isn't it? I'm going back to my mom's house.
Oh, do you know that there's nobody living there anymore?
What?
It's already been put up for sale, and it's gone now.
Then where are you now?
It's none of your business.
But we're family, aren't we? Whatever. Just tell me where you are right now. I don't have anywhere to go, and I'm lost. Did you rent an apartment or something?
Your mother was grateful that I looked after your father for all those years when he was ill. And so, to thank me, she used the inheritance to build a new house for me and Kelly, so there's no home for you to go back to anymore.
A house? Even though they didn't even give me 1 penny of the inheritance? There's no way! That has to be a joke! I'm going to live there with you! So hurry up and give me the address! You haven't turned in the divorce papers yet, have you?
I turned those in long ago. When Thomas found out that I had already submitted the divorce papers, he was at a complete loss for words and was silent in shock on the other end of the phone. And then, without even showing any mercy, I continued to tell Thomas that I was going to collect a settlement fee for child support fees from him. My last words to him were to wait for my lawyer to contact him, and then I hung up the phone. After being dumped by his mistress, Thomas was also fired from the job, and he was disowned from his family, and he had nowhere else left to go. All he had left was a $1 million mansion and his debt. And on top of that, because Thomas was going to have to pay a settlement fee and child support fees to me, I heard that he's now living a sad, lonely life running part-time jobs from working 24/7. His mistress also got fired from the company at the same time, and because she tried to get out of paying the settlement fee to me, I asked my lawyer to handle it for me. But then I got a phone call from her the other day, crying and apologizing to me. Her attitude was like a completely different person from the day that she called, screaming and yelling such nonsense at me. And I was so shocked. Of course, I told her that I was going to be collecting a full settlement fee from her, and I hung up. Because she was only 22 years old and young, I could only hope that this would be a lesson for her and she would never lay hands on a married man ever again. As for me, my daughter and I moved into the new house and began our new lives, and we were able to gain a very comfortable life.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.